Hello and welcome to our time of collective worship today. Thank you for joining us and I hope you enjoy our time together. Let us start with our school prayer.
Dear God, as we light our candle, help us to be kind to each other and to do our best. Amen.
Last week's Silver Bubble helped us as we looked at the theme of kindness.
Let's choose to be kind!
This week's theme is generosity and what it means to be generous, what it means to be ready and prepared to be a cheerful giver of our time, of our efforts, of our skills and our talents, and of the things that we have in order to help others. Very much builds on last week's theme of kindness, and this week we'll look at a Bible story that helps us to think about generosity and then have a look at the work of a charity where generosity very much inspires everything that they do. Let's start with our story. It takes us to a mountainside where Jesus has been teaching his disciples, but lots of people have been hearing about what Jesus has been doing and what he's been saying, and they're keen to go and see as well. So a huge crowd of people, 5,000 people, climb up this mountain to where Jesus and his disciples are, just so they can hear what Jesus has to say and they can learn from him and they can be inspired by him. But it's quite late in the day. They've been travelling quite a way to get to him, and the day is drawing to an end. And Jesus, his disciples, and indeed the 5,000 people who have come are all a bit hungry. So Jesus says to his disciples, look, we need to feed them. And the disciples look panicked, they look alarmed. They don't have anything to feed them with, and it's going to be impossible to go down to the nearest town and buy some food because there's just too many people. To feed 5,000 people is going to take a huge amount of money that they simply don't have or could even believe themselves ever having. So they're a bit confused by his question. How can we feed them? There's nothing to give them. We just need to send them home. But Jesus doesn't want to send them home on a long journey before they've eaten. He wants them to have some supper. Eventually they realise that a little boy, as he's described in the Bible, has 5 loaves of bread. Not big loaves, just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish that he brought with him. Obviously his packed lunch that he brought to this gathering with him so he could eat. Maybe the people around him could eat. But what the boy didn't do was say to the few people around him, maybe his family and maybe a few others, quick, come with me. Come over here, we'll hide behind this rock and we'll share out this bread and this fish. Because it's probably only enough for a few people. No, the boy is prepared to give it to the disciples who give it to Jesus. He's prepared to offer what he does have, which isn't a lot. He's prepared to give it to Jesus and say, you can have this. He doesn't know what Jesus is going to do with it. He doesn't quite work out how this is going to be solve their problem, but he is generous enough to give what he has, the little that he has, so that he can do his bit to help others. Maybe he thinks other people have some loaves and fish, but he's the only one. And the disciples hardly think this is going to work either. They probably, too, like the boy, think, well, it's not going to go very far. But the boy was prepared to give it. And Jesus, I think, really valued and really appreciated the boy's generosity and his faith. And what Jesus then did was one of his great miracles. He broke the bread, he got their people to sit down in groups and he broke the bread into pieces and the pieces just kept going. And so the 5,000 were fed and they had 12 basketfuls of bread left over. The 5 loaves, after they had eaten more than as much as they needed, there were still 12 basketfuls of bread left over. Jesus had performed a great miracle. But again, this story started. It began with a little boy saying, this is what I have. And I'm happy to share it. I'm willing to share it. And then Jesus did a miracle with what the boy offered him. It's an inspiring story about how we can give the little that we have. We don't have to give enough to kind of solve all the problems, but if we all give our little bit, if we do what we can, then together we can end up achieving something greater than we could have done by ourselves. If I had my Habits of Mind puppets with me, then I would have Husky with me, who's our collaboration puppet. Husky knows that we can achieve more together than we can often achieve by ourselves. And that's what generosity is about. It's about giving what we have so that we can achieve more together and we can look after more people than we could just by ourselves. Charities very much work off the goodwill of generosity. Charities rely on generosity for the people who give money to support the charity so the charity can keep going, to the people who work for the charity, who give their time, who give up lots of other things so they can give their time to the charity, whether that's volunteering in their spare time or whether that's working for the charity and giving up other careers that they might have followed so they can do something to help that charity serve the people around them. One of the charities I want to look at today is a wonderful charity, a missionary organisation called MAF. MAF stands for Mission Aviation Fellowship. And what they do is this, I'll read it straight from their website. It says, for 75 years, MAF has been flying light aircraft over jungles, mountains, swamps and deserts. MAF enable more than 2,000 aid, development and mission organisations. They enable other charities to bring medical care, emergency relief and long-term development and Christian hope to thousands of communities that would otherwise be very isolated. So MAF have a whole sort of fleet of planes, small aircraft, that go from place to place across Africa and across many parts of particularly the southern hemisphere, where it's really hard to get to, where there are people living who aren't able to get to these medical supplies and these places that they might need to because they're living so far away up in the mountains or deep into the forests. And MAF send planes to and from these places so they can deliver the things they need and the people they need to be able to see. Sometimes they deliver doctors, sometimes they deliver people who are going to help with the teaching. Sometimes they deliver people who are going to help in a particular emergency. If there's been a flood or there's been a storm that's destroyed homes, they can deliver people who are able to build new things for them and deliver the equipment. So it's a really vital job that they do. It says this on their website too. Every 4 minutes, an MAF plane is taking off or landing somewhere in the world to help eliminate the barriers to physical and spiritual transformation. Their enabling partners is at the core of what they do and those who support the charity help make that possible. Every 4 minutes, one of their planes takes off from probably a rather small runway, either on the top of a mountainside or somewhere out in the countryside. It takes off and it's delivering something to help people who are isolated because of where they live or because of the conditions in which they're living. So they do amazing work and they've been doing it for 75 years. But it's not just them. What they're doing is generously supporting all the other charities who are trying to help as well. So they're not trying to just achieve something for their own sake. They are generously giving up their planes, their time, their money to be able to help all the other charities in those countries and in the continent of Africa particularly and into sort of other parts of the Pacific to be able to help people who really need help. I want to focus on a couple who joined MAF a couple of years ago. They've been living in England and their names are Dave and Becky. Now Dave had a great job as a avionics engineer, someone who fixes planes, someone who helps work out why a plane's not quite working as it should be and fixes it so it can get to flying again and get working again. Someone who works a lot around their navigation so that the planes are reliable in getting to the place that they need to get to. A very clever man. And Becky is an author. She's a talented writer. She's also a talented speaker as well. And she and Dave decided that they wanted to go and work for MAF, using Dave's skills as a avionics engineer, a plane expert, that they'd go to Uganda, which is where they're now based, and use their skills and their talents. So Dave gave up his great job. Becky has sort of put her writing to a side for a period of time so that they can go out and help not only the people in Uganda, but across Africa and across the southern hemisphere who will be helped by the planes that MAF look after and run and fly to bring what is needed to these places. Got a couple of pictures of some of the work of them and the work that they do. So here is Dave and Becky. As I say, it's 2 years they moved out to Uganda And when they went out to Uganda, obviously they were leaving family behind in England, leaving lots of friends behind, leaving the security of their home. And they went out to Uganda on the generosity of others who supported them and helped raise the funds that they needed to be able to make the journey out to Uganda and live there. So it's not only their generosity, not only the generosity of MAF, but also the generosity of the many people supporting them. All of these things, that's why it's so linked to collaboration, all of these things working together so that they can serve and help. Here's Dave test flying one of the planes he's recently been fixing. And they are small aircraft, so very different from some of the planes that we're used to seeing in the sky. In fact, here is one of the aircraft that he's been working on, getting ready to fly again, getting ready to deliver a doctor out to a country or to a village that's desperately in need of a doctor to come and help them. And Becky has been using her time to help in various projects across Uganda, teaching groups of women, working particularly with the women in the nearby city of Kampala. She works helping a dance project, an outreach dance project in the slums of Kampala, trying to help the poorest have something that they can really learn from and enjoy doing and be supported through. So they're very busy people, extremely busy people in Uganda, and obviously Dave flies across to lots of different places as well as part of his work looking after the planes. I asked Dave and Becky, I asked them a question, sent them an email, and the question was, what inspires you to be generous? What inspires you to be generous? Because clearly they are. They gave up their life in England, they flew out to Uganda, and they now live there and work there tirelessly, helping and supporting people who before they didn't even know. So what inspired them to be generous? And this is what they said. They said, it's easy to use gifts we have to make money and to buy stuff, but it's so much more fulfilling and inspiring to use those talents to do more than simply exist. Even though it's sometimes terrifying, we both love living the life God has called us to overseas. There is nothing as exciting as following the plans he has for us. For Dave and Becky, they understood and they felt that the skills that they had, the gifts that they had, were given to them by God. And they wanted to use those gifts to serve God and to serve the world that he has made. And so that's why they decided to go out to Uganda, and that's why they continue to work out there. Of course they miss family and friends, of course. There are times, as they say, when it's terrifying. But they were determined to be generous with the things that they believed God had given them. And so they made a brave decision and went out to work for MAF. And are blessing many lives, many thousands of lives across that area and beyond, reaching the people who are most isolated and most in need of help. There are lots of examples that we've looked at of generosity and what that might mean for us day by day. But like the boy in the story, and like Dave and Becky working for MAF, it starts with being prepared and ready to share what you do have, whether that's your time, whether that's your words, whether that's your gifts and your talents. Maybe it's just your hard work. Maybe it's the things you have. All of those things, if we're prepared to give the little that we have to help others, then together, in generosity, we can achieve far more than we could have ever achieved on our own. That's the power of generosity. So I wonder, in what ways will you be generous this week? What little things do you have? Is it your time? Is it your skills, your talents? How can you use those things to help others? How can you be generous with those things so that together we can achieve more than we could achieve on our own? We're going to have a time of prayer now, which Silver Bubble are going to help us with. And if you'd like to join in, please do say amen at the end. And if not, use this time to reflect on those things that you can be generous in, those things that you have, the skills and the talents you have to be able to help others. And I look forward to hearing the many stories of how your generosity has helped the people around you. Silver Bubble have written a prayer about today's theme of generosity.
Dear God, thank you for all that you've given us, for our for our friends and family, for our food and our home, for our school and our education, for the beautiful world that we live in.
Sorry for not being grateful for the things we have and not looking after the world around us.
Sorry for all the times when we have chosen not to be generous to others.
Please help us to be kind, thoughtful and generous.
Please help us to be generous with our time.
Help us to be generous with our skills and talents.
Help us to be generous with our hard work.
Help us to be generous with our words.
And help us to be generous with the things we have.
Amen.
Let us finish by saying the Lord's Prayer together.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, power and glory, forever and ever. Amen.